Welcome on in, action figure painter enjoyers. This is Sprues and Studs, and today we're going to be revisiting the Blob again. So, a few months back, I had reviewed the McFarlane Raven Guard Intercessor, and I kept complaining that this action figure was so bland, so boring. It looked literally like a black blob that you couldn't differentiate anything on that thing whatsoever. And I think I kept peppering those comments during the whole entire video. So I decided to use my miniature painting skills, and it would hopefully translate into the big action figure scale. So let's see how I improve this Raven Guard Intercessor. So starting off the video, you may realize there's something a little bit odd here, that I'm using basically Games Workshop paint names while you're looking at basically Duncan Rhodes stuff on screen. So pretty much halfway through when I was painting the chainsword, I wanted to do something a little bit different, mainly because I didn't really like the coverage of the Duncan Rhodes paint. So I went back to the Games Workshop one that we're so familiar with, because again, I really like the coverage. So anyways, what you're seeing me do now is basically wash the recesses of that bolt pistol with NULN oil, which is pretty much what I would typically do on a miniature. And then moving on, I am highlighting the raised areas on that bolt pistol with basically the equivalent of STORMHOST silver to give the bolt pistol more pop. And then finally, I am highlighting the casings with the equivalent of DAWNSTONE, again, to give that bolt pistol more pop. And this is what I would, again, typically do with the miniatures that would normally paint. Now, moving on with the chainsword, as you can see, it's really dull looking, and it needs a lot of TLC. So let's change that up a little bit with the Surcoat Silver, which is the equivalent of LEADBELCHER. So I'm painting the teeth of this chainsword with that color, and pretty much anything that was marked in silver originally I will be painting in the LEADBELCHER color. Now the casing of the chainsword is being painted with ABADDON black, as we have now switched back to the Games Workshop paints that I'm very used to painting. I've been using them a lot. So right now we're doing more base coating with that LEADBELCHER. And as I said before, the previous silver spots are going to be brightened up with a real silver, as you can see over there. Now moving on, we are going to be base coating the handle with Screamer Pink. I really wanted to do a very high contrast thing because this action figure doesn't really have a lot of color. So I wanted to really give it more pop and more depth to it. So that's why I chose something that is, like I said, very high contrast. Again, the gold is very dull on the stock action figure, so to bring it to life, I'm going to use RETRIBUTOR armor to really brighten up the skull. Again, the contrast is very important because the Raven Guard is just a very boring black color, and you need something to differentiate all the different panels and stuff. So right now I am shading all the recesses on the chainsword, and then following by shading the handle with the Vulpes Pink. I really like this contrast medium, mainly because it just settles in the grooves, and it really brings, like I said, more depth, more character to it. Now I am shading the areas on the skull with the Reikland Flesh Shade, and to give it more pop, I use Black Templar. I use Black Templar mostly in areas that I really want a dark color, and the contrast medium is really thick and better than the Citadel shades that are typically used. And now you can see me highlighting the different raised edges, and this is pretty much the whole entire thing of painting. You're going to be base coating, and then you're going to be shading, and then finally you're going to be doing highlighting and blending and all that stuff to make things really pop. And with the handle over here, I really like using the pink horror, and it really looks nice. Like I said, with the contrast, you can really see this blade pop into life, and that's exactly what I'm doing right now. And this is a very common thing that I use during my miniature painting. Now, to make the panels look a little bit more better, I am going to be highlighting the raised edges of the chainsword, as you can see that I'm doing. This whole entire action figure is full of panels, so you are going to be doing a ton of edge highlighting. And so you see this is the final product over here, and it is a marked difference from what it started before. Now, moving on to the body of this intercessor, we're going to be base coating that icon with LEADBELCHER. As you can see, that icon was very poorly painted in my opinion. The edges were black, and I just wanted to make everything crisp and clean, just like any other miniature person would do. And following this, we're going to be shading the icon with NULN oil. And as you can see, we're basically setting into a pattern over here that you can predict at every single time when I do these videos. And as I said before, this action figure is a very, very dull color, so I wanted to give it more pop by putting more life and more color into the action figure, which it desperately needed. So you can see this starting is coming into shape over here, and right now we're going to be highlighting the icon with the STORMHOST silver, and to make this thing, again, pop out, come to life. And that's what the whole point of customizing your whole entire action figure and your miniatures are, so they can come to life. Now, it was about this point in time where I realized that, what happened to the film that I was doing when I was painting the whole icon in the front of the intercessor? And apparently I lost that film, unfortunately. So what I ended up doing was using the contrast paint called Apothecary White and basically filling in the aquila and the various areas that are on the feathers of that aquila. And the results were okay, I think. The contrast paint kind of settled in areas that I didn't really want. So out of all the things that I did for this action figure, I think I was probably most disappointed with how the thing looked in the end. And unfortunately, the thing that I screwed up the most on is literally front and center where everybody can see. But hey, you know what? We can just take this as a learning experience and try to do a little bit better next time, you know? So as I alluded to before, all the while that I'm doing all this stuff, I am basically edge highlighting every single one of these panels. I actually did not film a lot of the things that I was doing, mainly because it was a very, very repetitive and kind of sloggy kind of thing, which drove me nuts in the end. So right now I am painting the area on the heraldic shield, and I really wanted something to be a little bit simple. I didn't really want anything to be too complicated with that. So as you saw there, I used masking tape to basically make straight lines because it's very hard for me to make straight lines. So I used these painter's tape and I achieved that, although some of the paint bled underneath. So that's why I needed to touch up the area, and that's exactly what I did. And you will be able to see that touch up a little bit later on. So this is the area that's in between the chest and the hip region. There you see me just painstakingly edge highlight this area over and over again with all the armor panels, the folds and stuff. And like I said before, this was driving me absolutely bananas, but I would like to say that the end results looked really, really nice. So what I lamented on during the review video was that the belt buckle didn't look very well. And then the pouches did not look like they were really well painted either. So I put my money where my mouth is and basically decided to paint these things to give, again, like I said, more pop and life on these action figures. I've always been a fan of really warm tones on my action figures, and I think that the Mournfang Brown really makes a very nice contrast to the rest of the action figure. So that's why I decided to use that color. And I really don't like using cold colors with black because I just think it looks, well, like I said, a little bit too cold and a little bit too dull. So I like that warm color to make the action figure pop, and these are basically accessories that are there to help that thing pop. And as you can see, I am doing more edge highlighting to make the areas on the belt buckles stand out. Same thing, more edge highlighting with the pouches with the Scrag Brown. And I don't think I've actually mentioned before, when I edge highlight, I do not use the tip of the brush typically. I actually lightly press the edge of the paintbrush against the edge of all those panels. And as you can see there, I think that is pretty good looking in my opinion. And now we're pretty much getting to the end of the action figure where I'm just putting like the finishing touches on it. So right now in that area, you typically wouldn't want or need to paint, but I decided to do that. Again, more pop, more contrast because that's what it needed. And as you can see, more edge highlighting in panels. And like I said, I needed to do a lot of cleaning up with these things because those edges and what I painted there really did not look very good. So I had to go back with ABADDON black and clean up all those things, as you can see. And then right now I am edge highlighting with a very, very light gray called Administratum gray. As the helmet is the focal point on a Space Marine, I really wanted to make sure that this thing was going to pop out. So again, using black Templar, I like how thick and how bold that black color is, so I wanted to use those in the vent area. As you can see here, the stock silver areas on the helmet really were not painted well, so I wanted to clean that up. So that's why I'm painting these areas with LEADBELCHER so those areas can look nice and clean, because like I said, these things are front and center where you're looking at. So now moving on, I am shading those silver areas that I painted, and this actually makes the helmet pop out quite a lot. So next thing to do, I'm going to highlight those silver areas that I painted, and probably the most important thing was to paint the lenses with that base coat that I said. Now, I was actually thinking about gemming this action figure lenses, but I decided to take the cop-out easy way of doing things, which is basically once you base coat that silver area and then you cover it up with a contrast paint. As you can see here, I use Blood Angels Red, and you can see the lens looks more vibrant now rather than that flat shade. What I did not show you right there was I went in and actually painted the recessed areas with Apothecary White for the shades, and you can see that in the end that the helmet looks pretty damn good in my opinion. And we are now coming up with the final touches here as I am shading the areas with NULN oil on the backpack. And I'll have to say that out of all the areas on this action figure, the backpack needed the most work because it was literally a gigantic black blob that was pretty much a boring thing that you put on the back of the Space Marine. And so our painting journey is now done.
So, what did you all think about my painting skills? It's on display right here in a very, very large scale. I would have to say, in all honesty, most of this actually did turn out well. And I really like it now, how you're actually able to differentiate this armory panel from each other. It's because I did so much edge highlighting on this action figure. I'll be honest with you, that edge highlighting drove me completely crazy because, well, there were so many panels on that thing. But in the end, I'm pretty satisfied with how this turned out. You can obviously tell there is a marked difference from the original action figure to how it stands right now. There is color, there is character, there is pop with this guy. And I really, really like how this looks. The only thing I'm not really too satisfied with is, again, some of the edge highlighting is a little bit rough in my opinion, just because I'm not used to holding a straight edge for that long. And then secondly is, as you can see over here, the Aquila over here, I decided to use Apothecary White. And the contrast paint didn't really settle in the areas that I wanted to very well, so it looks a little bit messy. But for all intents and purposes, this looks so much better than it did before. I'm really pleased with my work, and I know that I can improve later in the future. So anyways, thank you so much for tuning in and watching this video. I hope that you can see some of my painting skills on display, or lack thereof. And I hope you enjoyed this video. And with that being said, thank you all, and I'll see you all in the next one.